When I got these new zombie slayers for Bunjie, I noticed the helical veins on there. Very, very obvious. I love the blazer veins. I really do like them. They shoot well out of all my crossbows. But look at that. Look at the twist on that. That twist is what's known as a helical twist. You know, Helix. Remember that band in the 80s? But a helix, you know, you've heard the term in chemistry, the double helix and all that stuff. Helical veins basically just has that sort of a twist to it. The idea is that it's going to get a little bit greater amount of spin in the air, roll in the air. It'll catch the air a little bit better and spin a little bit better and recover a little bit faster downrange. Pretty interesting. It's a good concept, right? And I think what happens is typically your veins are just offset. They're kind of straight on the shaft, but here they get that helical because they're so offset, they start to wrap around the shaft, and as it wraps around the shaft, it gets that little twist in it. My primary concern is whether a helical vein is going to fit in the flight groove, right? Some crossbows might have a narrow enough flight groove where it won't slide down the rail comfortably. Fortunately, on the Deathstalker, on this particular model, that flight groove is plenty wide to accommodate that style of vein. And I got to tell you, on Bunjie and Bunjie Jr., the flight groove on those is plenty wide as well. Because I knew this was going to be an issue, I went and actually took my Easton Easy Fletch and took the arms off of that and put the helical fletching arms on it. I changed it over and I actually refletched one of my Deathstalker arrows. If you ever look at the Deathstalker arrows I get, these are for Bunjie III, the Scorpyd Deathstalker arrows. Makes sense. It's just an offset. You see what I mean? It just sort of goes off at an angle a little bit. If you increase that too much, that's when you start to get that helical shape as that vein has to wrap around the shaft. That straight vein, however, is what the Deathstalker arrows came with. So when I had to refletch one of my Deathstalker arrows because it's going through the middle of my target that's getting all shot out, and it sat in there a little too long and it made the veins all crinkly and everything else. Didn't do too shabby a job. I think that turned out pretty good. But you can see the greater offset creates that helical effect. Don't tread on the Deathstalker. But the big question is, how do these things fly, right? I mean, they look great, Rich. You've explained that, but how do they fly out of the crossbows? That's the big question. And the opinions of people were all over the place. I didn't really know what to expect. Some people were saying that on the faster crossbow, like the Deathstalker, you're going to slow it down too much with these helical veins, and you're going to turn, it's like a parachute on the end of the arrow that slows it down, all that sort of thing. Other people were telling me that the helical veins are going to increase the spin, increase the roll of the arrow as it goes through the air, allowing it to recover faster, handle air resistance better, maintain speed at longer distance a little bit better, and therefore decrease the arc of the arrow. I did go out there and shoot them a whole bunch of times, and I wrote down all the results in my crossbow journal. Now, I didn't shoot a lot of video on this one, and the reason for that is it was hot, it was sweaty. I shot most of the shots with no shirt on, and I don't think anybody wants to see that, including the neighbors. We did a whole bunch of shots, and I'll sort of read to you the results that I got. We'll start with the Deathstalker, with Bunjie III, the Scorpyd Deathstalker 420, the slick black Cadillac of crossbows. I want you to know I did an awful lot of work on these shots. I only shot 2 arrows, one with the helical veins and one without. And then I would shoot each one, go out and write down the results, retrieve the arrow, come back in, walk upstairs, back to the balcony, shoot it again in the 60-yard backyard, and repeat. I shot 3 different distances, basically 20, 40, 60 is what I was going for. And I shot those 3 different distances with each arrow. I wasn't sighting in for those 2 arrows. I'm just trying to see what the groups were with these 2 arrows. There really wasn't much difference between the 2 arrows at 22 yards. Basically a 1-inch group. When you start to increase your distances, you start to see differences in your shots, and you start to see those inadequacies. At 36 yards, and I was shooting 36 because I got the Burris Oracle X installed on that crossbow, and that one, it doesn't matter so much if you're at exactly 40, you can range find inside the scope for precisely that distance of 36 yards. I didn't even take a rangefinder with me into the yard. I just eyeballed it and dropped the target off, and I was at 36 yards. Doesn't matter for the purposes of this test, however, because again, we're just looking at the grouping of the arrows. I don't care about whether, I can always sight in for either arrow if you choose to use one versus the other. I'm really just looking at the grouping and recording the results. The stock Deathstalker arrow at 36 yards, basically a 1.5-inch group at 36 yards. That's pretty good. With the helical, the refletched helical one, a 1.5-inch group at 36 yards. Again, basically the same. Drag the target down there, set it up at 61 yards. Hopefully we can beat the storm that we're destined to receive here in the 60-yard backyard. Shot number one, we'll take a look at this bad boy, see what we got. Now again, gotta stress, we're not talking about accuracy. Either of these arrows, assuming they are consistent, we can sight in for either one of those arrows. We're a little low. The one on the left is our stock Deathstalker arrow. We're a little low on that. I can true that in. 60 yards, you're asking a lot. I think the scope is dead on. The timing is dead on. Everything is shooting well out of the Deathstalker, but you can see that's the stock arrow. Inch low, I'd say. Close to an inch low, maybe a little less. Here, we got the elevation. Nice elevation. Oddly enough, the helical is to the right about 1, 2, 3 inches, I'd say. And that is kind of a surprise. You would expect it to be high. You know, the arc is what we're supposed to have a difference with. The helical veins. Still shooting at the same holes, so it's easy to see what's going on here. The first bullseye of the evening is courtesy of the helical. It's the helical because, let's see if we can turn that. You can tell that's the helical. Obviously, because of the "Don't Tread on Me," the Gadsden flag logo. I love that. But it's obviously a helical vein. That helps. Look how easy these pull out of the Bulldog. Oh, I love the Bulldog target. A little frustrated when I first got it, but man, that was all me. I'm telling you. Once you warm it up a little bit in the backyard, everything pulls real easy. Of course, that one looks like it was in another hole. Our elevation dropped a little bit on this one, and we were 1 inch left. So we'll pull that dude. Oh yeah. Put the target back on the old heavy-duty hand cart. Pick up our other arrow and make the trek back to the crossbow balcony. That one right there for another 60-yard shot. Well, we're gonna get some rain here pretty quick, I can tell. But we are nearing an answer on the helicals, at least with regard to the Scorpyd Deathstalker, because there's my number 12. That's my factory fletch, a little bit of an offset, and I'd say we're too low because we're aiming here technically. I did hit that once, just so you know. I can hit a bullseye, look at that. But we're 1 low, 2 low, so we're 2 low, 1.5 over to the left or so. And then our helical, there's our Gadsden flag. So really, out of Bunjie III, the Scorpyd Deathstalker 420, the stock arrow shot better with the stock vein, the offset vein, than it did with the helical. Now, I totally get that there's that one shot with the helical that was 3 inches to the right or whatever, and that throws the group off. But that could just as easily have happened with the stock arrow. And the fact that it didn't, the fact that it shot a tighter group, is really exactly what I'm trying to determine by shooting the same arrow 3 times. Now, what about Bunjie's arrow? The arrow that started all of this, the zombie slayer, right? With the helical veins on it. Well, what do we have here? A zombie slayer arrow with offset veins. That's right. I actually pulled the arms off the East and Easy Fletch, put the offset arms back in, and gave a 1 degree offset to some 2-inch blazers, the same as what came on those new zombie slayers with the helical fletchings. Put the 2-inch blazers on there at a 1 degree offset, and let's see how that flies compared to the helicals. Shot 1 arrow, the helical, then I shot the offset, then I went and got them. Then I shot the helical, I shot the offset, and went and got them. And I
shot the helical, shot the offset, went and got, right?
A lot of work. Did it at 20, 40, and 60 yards out of Bunjie, the 2010 Excalibur Axiom, an older, slower crossbow, shooting these 563 grains or so arrows. What results did we get? Kind of interesting, and I'm anxious to hear what you think about this. Now, with the helical, right, the way they came, I was shooting a 1.5-inch group at 20 yards. It's so-so. With the offset that I fletched, quite proud of this. Are you ready for this? It hit the same hole all 3 times. It was the same all 3 times. So a 0-inch group. Pretty proud of that because I fletched that arrow myself. At 40 yards, both of them shot a 2-inch group, though, at 40 yards. Okay, so the group's opening up. But then we reach out to 60 yards with the OB. 60 yards for a crossbow, I want to remind you, this is a crossbow that came with a 50-yard scope, right? This is not a crossbow that was really even designed to shoot 60 yards. It was built and sold with a scope in mind that shot 50 yards, that only had 50-yard reticles, but didn't even have a speed ring to adjust it. So that's what we're dealing with here. But nonetheless, that crossbow pushed the zombie slayer downrange at 60 yards with the helical, a 1.5-inch group, a 1.5-inch group. That's pretty good. Nothing to complain about there. A 1.5-inch group at 60 yards. That now that we're sighted in for that, that's pretty good. Everybody's happy with that. With the fletched one that I did, the 1-degree offset, my group was 0. Again, I'm not kidding you. 1.5-inch left of the bullseye and 2 inches low all 3 times. So it was a little bit over to the left and 2 inches low all 3 times. I think if you're shooting a heavy arrow and you're shooting a big, fat, fixed blade broadhead, helicals might be just the ticket for you. I am not shooting a fixed blade broadhead, right? I have no reason to worry about that at all. With field points, the helical is not as accurate across the board in all of these, with the 2 crossbows that I tested here, right? Is not as accurate for me on these crossbows as the 1-degree offset is. So I have now taken the zombie slayers. I have completely refletched all of them with 1-degree offsets, and that's where we're going, okay? We're going with the green and orange veins, look pretty cool, but they are also shooting great. It's easy to conclude from all of this that really, for our hunting distances, 20, 30 yards or so, it really doesn't make any difference whether you're shooting a helical or not, or at least it didn't for me in these 2 crossbows. An older, slower crossbow and a more modern crossbow shooting close to 400 feet per second. Really made no significant difference. Maybe a little bit better with the offset on Bunjie. Other than that, it is what it is. My buddy Scott had a really good point about this. If helical veins were more consistent, more accurate than offsets, then tournament archers would have figured that out by now. And they would exclusively use helicals. And they would have told us about it. And we'd all be using helicals. The reason they're not is because they just have not found them to be more accurate. I hope you got something out of this video. I hope you enjoyed that. And until next time, watch one of these other videos. But also, all hail Bunjie.